I've always loved the outdoors, but I never imagined a weekend camping trip could completely change the way I saw someone, or myself. My best friend Alex and I had been planning a short escape for weeks. The city felt suffocating. Deadlines, noisy neighbors, the constant hum of life that never stopped. So when Friday rolled around, we loaded my old Subaru with sleeping bags, backpacks, and a cooler packed with snacks and hit the road. Alex had this effortless energy that made the drive itself feel like an adventure. His wavy brown hair always fell just right, and his green eyes sparkled when he laughed. He'd hum along to whatever song came on the stereo, his voice a little off-key, but infectious enough that I found myself smiling even when I wanted to frown. The drive took us through dense pine forests, the city skyline shrinking behind us, replaced by endless green and the occasional deer crossing the road. We talked about everything and nothing, trading stories about college, work, and the dumb things we'd done in the past. It felt easy, natural, like the world outside didn't exist for a little while. We arrived at the clearing just as the sun was beginning to set. The lake shimmered, reflecting the streaks of pink and gold in the sky, surrounded by towering trees. Alex's jaw practically dropped. "Nate, this is insane," he breathed. "I found it on a hike months ago," I admitted, shrugging. "Best wrong turn I ever made." We set up camp quickly, the kind of silent teamwork that comes from years of friendship. I handled the tent while Alex gathered firewood. When the fire was finally crackling, we sat around it, eating a simple stir-fry I'd prepared. The air smelled of pine and smoke, and for the first time that week, I felt relaxed. Then, Alex glanced down at his sleeping bag, frowning. So mine's totally busted," he admitted. "The zipper's completely shot. Can't zip it at all." I froze for a second, realizing what he was about to ask. "Mine's a winter bag, pretty roomy. It's technically big enough for two," I said carefully, trying not to let my heart race too obviously. He laughed nervously, relief evident on his face. "Snug's fine. Better than freezing out here." Later, after the fire had burned down and the cold began creeping in, we crawled into the tent. Alex went in first, taking the side against the wall, and I followed. Immediately, the tight fit made us hyper-aware of each other. My chest brushed against his back. Our legs nearly touched. I told myself to stay still, act normal. But the warmth radiating off him and the faint smell of pine smoke from the fire made my heart pound. "This is awkward," he whispered, letting out a nervous laugh. "A bit?" I admitted softly. "But at least you won't freeze." "True," he murmured, shifting slightly. The movement brought our bodies even closer, and I felt a flutter in my stomach that was impossible to ignore. I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself, but every brush of his arm, every slight movement made me hyper-aware of him. That night, under the quiet sky, something shifted. It was subtle, unspoken, but undeniable. A spark I hadn't noticed before was now impossible to ignore. We lay there for a while, stiffly pretending to sleep, though neither of us was fooling anyone. I could feel every subtle shift of his body, every tiny movement that brought us a fraction closer together. My mind was a whirlwind. Don't overthink it. He's just cold, or maybe he's not. I heard him let out a quiet sigh, almost imperceptible, and I realized he was shivering. Without thinking, I shifted slightly, wrapping my arm around him. The contact was light at first, tentative, like testing the waters, but then he leaned into me just a bit, and my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. "You warm?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Yeah, thanks," he murmured, his breath brushing against my neck. There was a softness in his tone I'd never heard before, something intimate, unguarded. My chest tightened. I had known Alex for years, but this felt like discovering a new part of him, a side I had no right to see, and yet I couldn't pull away. The forest outside was silent, except for the occasional rustle of leaves. The lake reflected the moonlight, faint and silver, and inside the tent the world had shrunk down to just the two of us. Every heartbeat, every breath seemed amplified, making it impossible to ignore the tension building between us. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the silence, but words felt clumsy, inadequate. So I stayed still, letting my hand rest lightly on his arm, feeling the warmth beneath the flannel. Minutes passed, or was it hours? Time didn't exist in that cocoon of quiet. I felt him shift again, closer this time, until my arm was draped fully over him. I froze for a second, heart racing. Then a tiny thrill shot through me. This is happening. He's letting this happen. Alex, I whispered, my lips almost brushing his ear. He didn't pull away. My chest pressed closer against his back, and the warmth between us became almost unbearable. I could feel his breath hitch slightly. I wanted to turn and look at him, wanted to see his expression, the way his eyes might reflect what he was feeling, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I let the silence stretch, letting our closeness speak for itself. The boundaries of friendship, the familiar lines we had always respected, had blurred in a way I hadn't anticipated. Eventually, I felt him shift again, moving his hand to rest over mine. The touch was tentative, but deliberate. My stomach fluttered violently, a mix of nerves and something deeper, something I hadn't admitted even to myself until that moment. "Are we okay?" he whispered, his voice shaking slightly. I swallowed hard, my own voice barely above a murmur. "Yeah, more than okay." He let out a quiet laugh, nervous but relieved, and pressed a little closer. In that moment, I realized we weren't just sharing warmth, we were sharing something more. Something unspoken, something that had been simmering beneath the surface for years and was finally breaking through. I didn't know what the morning would bring. I didn't know if we would talk about this, or if it would remain a secret between the two of us. All I knew was that right then, in the quiet of the forest, with the fire's embers long gone, I was completely captivated by him. And judging by the way he leaned into me, I wasn't the only one. Morning came slowly. The soft glow of sunlight filtered through the tent fabric, painting everything in gold. I stirred, still wrapped around Alex, and for a second I panicked. Did we really fall asleep like this? My heart pounded, but when I felt him nuzzle closer, resting his head against my shoulder, I realized it didn't matter. Neither of us had pulled away. He let out a quiet groan, stretching lazily. "Morning," he mumbled, his voice still husky from sleep. "Morning," I replied, trying to keep my tone casual, though my chest felt like it was trying to escape my ribcage. Alex shifted slightly, turning to face me. Our eyes met for the first time since the night before, and I felt a jolt of something, anticipation, nervousness, desire, all rolled into one. He smiled faintly, that same mischievous sparkle in his green eyes that had always made my chest tighten. "You? Comfortable?" I asked, trying not to sound like I had been thinking about this all night. "Yeah," he said, voice soft. "I don't usually wake up like this with anyone." I swallowed, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "Neither do I admitted, almost a whisper. We untangled slowly, careful not to break the strange intimacy that had formed overnight. Even sitting side by side outside the tent, drinking coffee from our thermos, I felt the connection lingering. Light touches as we passed each other sugar or mugs, lingering glances, a brush of fingers that lingered just a second too long. The day passed in a blur of hikes and swimming in the lake. Every time Alex laughed, I felt that same flutter in my stomach. Every time our shoulders bumped, I felt it again. And slowly, I realized this wasn't just about the thrill of the night, it was deeper. I had cared about him for years, in ways I had buried under friendship and familiarity, but now those feelings had a life of their own. Later, when we returned to camp and sat by the lake, Alex skipped a stone across the water. "You ever think about us?" he asked suddenly, not looking at me, just watching the stone bounce and sink. I froze. "Us?" I echoed, my voice catching. "Yeah," he said, finally turning to meet my gaze. Like, what this could be, instead of just friendship. My chest tightened, my mind was spinning. I had imagined this moment for years, but never thought it would actually come. I've thought about it, I admitted slowly, For a long time, actually. His eyes softened, relief and something else. Hope? Shining through. Me too, he said quietly. I didn't think. I leaned closer, feeling the familiar warmth radiate off him, and he met me halfway. Our lips brushed, tentative at first, testing, then pressing together more firmly. The kiss was soft, slow, electric, and it sent a thrill through my entire body. When we pulled back, we were both laughing nervously, but the air between us had changed forever. That day, the forest felt alive in a new way, not just with birds and wind, but with possibility, with connection, with love that had been waiting for the right moment to surface. We spent the evening curled up by the fire again, this time fully aware of the feelings between us. Our hands found each other naturally, fingers intertwining, and it felt like coming home. The stars blinked overhead, silent witnesses to the start of something neither of us could have anticipated, but both of us desperately wanted. Night fell over the lake like a velvet curtain, the air crisp and still. The fire had burned down to embers, leaving only the faint smell of smoke in the air. Inside the tent, Alex and I settled into the sleeping bag again, but this time, the tension was different. Last night had been a test of proximity. Tonight, we both knew exactly what it meant. I felt him shift closer, his hand brushing mine. I didn't pull away. Instead, I let our fingers intertwine, the simple contact sending electricity up my arm. "You're really warm," he murmured, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Yeah," I whispered back, letting my chest press lightly against his back. "So are you." For a long moment we stayed like that, silent except for the sound of our breathing and the occasional creak of the tent fabric. Every small touch, the brush of his shoulder against mine, the way his leg pressed against mine, was charged with something new, something deeper. Then he shifted again, this time turning slightly to face me. His green eyes caught mine in the dim light of the small lantern we'd left burning, and I saw the same mix of curiosity, nervousness, and longing mirrored in my own reflection. "I've wanted this for so long," he confessed, voice trembling slightly. "Me too," I admitted, my own throat tight with emotion. "I just didn't know if you felt the same." A small nervous laugh escaped him, and he leaned closer until our foreheads touched. The warmth of his skin against mine, the faint scent of pine and him, made my chest ache. And then, finally, our lips met in a kiss that was both tentative and urgent. It started slow, soft, testing boundaries. But as the seconds stretched, it deepened, becoming more insistent. My hands moved naturally, resting on his sides, feeling the familiar firmness of his body beneath the flannel pajama shirt. His hands traced my arms, over my shoulders, and eventually down my back, pulling me closer as if to make sure I wouldn't slip away. Time seemed to dissolve. Outside the tent, the world was silent. Inside, it was just the two of us, exploring a closeness that had always been there but was finally free to breathe. When we finally pulled back, gasping slightly, both of us laughing nervously, the air between us was electric. Neither of us spoke for a long while, letting the moment linger, letting the reality of what we had shared sink in. "You know," he said finally, voice soft, "I think I've wanted this since forever, but I didn't know if it was okay, if it was possible." "It is," I whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to his temple. "It's more than okay. It feels right." We curled up together again, bodies pressed close, hands entwined. Sleep came slowly, interrupted by soft laughter, whispered confessions, and the quiet rhythm of shared breaths. That night, in the darkness of the forest, inside our small tent by the lake, Alex and I didn't just share warmth. We shared trust, vulnerability, and the start of something neither of us had dared to name before. Morning arrived slowly, filtered through the thin tent fabric in soft golden streaks. I stirred first, still tangled with Alex in the sleeping bag, and for a moment, I just lay there, savoring the warmth of him pressed against me. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet intimacy of being this close to someone I trusted completely. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough from sleep. His head rested lightly against my shoulder, and I felt a flutter in my chest I couldn't ignore. "Morning," I whispered back. We untangled slowly, laughter escaping us as we fumbled our way out of the sleeping bag without toppling it over. The first light of day made the lake outside shimmer, and we both paused for a moment to take it in. Everything looked peaceful, almost unreal in its beauty. After a quick breakfast by the fire, we decided to explore a trail that led around the lake. The path was narrow, flanked by towering pines, their needles carpeting the ground. Alex walked just slightly behind me, and I noticed the way the sunlight caught his hair, how his movements seemed effortless. My chest tightened. Every now and then, our hands brushed, a casual touch when passing him a water bottle, a brief shoulder bump as we climbed a small incline. But each touch carried weight now, a silent acknowledgement of the night before. Neither of us had to speak to confirm it. The air between us was charged, alive with something new. We reached a small clearing overlooking the lake and stopped, both of us catching our breath. Alex leaned against a tree, and I couldn't help but notice the way his shirt clung to him from the climb, revealing just enough of his toned back. I swallowed hard, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "You okay?" he asked, catching my gaze and tilting his head slightly. Yeah, I'm fine," I said, voice tighter than I wanted. My heart hammered in my chest, betraying me. He smiled faintly, that teasing curve of his lips that had always made my chest flutter. "You're nervous." "I'm not," I lied, though I knew he could see right through me. He stepped closer, our shoulders brushing again, this time deliberately. I caught the subtle shift of his hand, fingers grazing mine, and I didn't pull away. Instead, I let him intertwine our fingers, feeling a thrill shoot through me. We spent the rest of the day hiking, swimming, and exploring small inlets along the lake. Every laugh, every touch, every shared glance deepened the bond between us. By the time evening fell, I realized something remarkable. This wasn't just a fleeting spark from the night before. It was real, stronger than I'd expected, deeper than I'd allowed myself to imagine. Back at the campfire that night, we cooked a simple meal and talked about everything. Our fears, our dreams, our past mistakes. I felt lighter than I had in months. And as the fire dwindled into glowing embers, Alex leaned against me again, resting his head on my shoulder. "I don't want this weekend to end," he murmured softly, voice barely above the crackle of the fire. "Neither do I," admitted. "Neither do I." We didn't speak after that. Words weren't necessary. The quiet closeness, the gentle touches, the warmth we shared in the firelight was enough. That night, the forest around us felt like it belonged to us alone, a world where we could finally explore what had always been there, waiting for the right moment to bloom. The final night of our camping trip arrived faster than I wanted it to. The air was colder now, the forest quieter, the stars sharper against the dark sky. I lay in the sleeping bag with Alex, our bodies pressed together as naturally as if they'd been designed that way. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, just the warmth, the closeness, the trust that had been building since the first night. "I'm going to miss this," he whispered, letting his hand rest lightly on my chest. "You me this, all of it." I tightened my arm around him, feeling the subtle rise and fall of his breathing. "Me too," I admitted, "but maybe it doesn't have to end when we leave the forest." He turned to face me fully, green eyes serious in the dim lantern light. "You mean, like us?" "Yes," I said softly, letting the word hang between us. "I've wanted this for a long time, Alex, more than I realized, and I don't want to hide it anymore." A smile spread slowly across his face, tentative but bright. "Me neither," he whispered. I think I've been waiting for the right moment, and I guess this is it." He leaned in, and this kiss was different from the first one. It was deeper, slower, filled with unspoken words and years of hidden feelings. Our hands roamed naturally, exploring warmth and comfort, learning each other in a way that felt both thrilling and safe. Every touch, every sigh, every brush of lips against skin was a promise that we were no longer just friends. Something had shifted irrevocably. I pulled back just slightly, resting my forehead against his. I don't want this weekend to end, I said again. Then it doesn't have to, he whispered, smiling softly. We'll figure out everything else later. Right now, just us. The night stretched on. We talked quietly, shared small touches, laughter, confessions, and more kisses. Outside, the forest stood still, the lake reflecting the moonlight like a silver mirror. Inside, we built our own world, one of warmth, trust, and connection that had always been waiting for the chance to exist. At some point, sleep came, not because we were tired, but because we were finally at peace. Wrapped up together in that oversized sleeping bag, hearts racing and calm all at once, I realized something. This was home. Not a place, not a city, not even a cabin in the woods, but him. When morning came, the sun spilling through the trees, we lingered in the tent, reluctant to leave the warmth and the closeness we had found. We didn't need words. A look, a smile, a simple squeeze of the hand said everything. The trip had been an escape, yes, but it had also been a beginning. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of the world pressing down on me. I felt light, happy, complete. Because beside me, Alex smiled, and I knew we'd found something worth holding on to, something real, lasting, and entirely ours. The drive back to the city was quiet, in a way that felt comfortable, not awkward. Our hands found each other naturally across the center console, fingers intertwined, thumbs brushing. I stole glances at Alex, his profile illuminated by the late morning sun, and I felt that same flutter I'd felt all weekend, excitement, tenderness, and something deeper I hadn't dared to name until now. Neither of us spoke much, and we didn't need to. The silence was filled with a new kind of understanding, a shared knowledge that something important had shifted between us. The forest, the lake, the stars, the fire, they had given us permission to feel what we'd been holding back for years. Back in the city, the streets were busy, noisy, alive, but it didn't feel the same as before. The weight of deadlines and responsibilities seemed lighter, more manageable, because we had something real waiting for us, something solid and undeniable. When we arrived at my apartment, Alex squeezed my hand before stepping out of the car. "This doesn't end here, right?" he asked, his green eyes meeting mine, hopeful and teasing at once. "No," I said firmly, smiling. "Not even close." Inside, we collapsed on the couch, laughing about the trip, the hikes, the awkward moments with the sleeping bag, and the cold mornings. But underneath the laughter, there was an unspoken layer, a quiet acknowledgement that everything had changed. Over the next few weeks, we navigated the world differently. Every touch, every glance, every small, shared moment reminded us of that weekend. The city felt alive with possibilities, not just stress. And slowly, naturally, the line between friendship and love blurred completely. One night, as we sat together on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker, Alex leaned his head on my shoulder. "I never want to forget that weekend," he whispered. "Neither do I said, pressing a kiss to his hair. It was just the beginning. And in that moment, I realized the truth. Some trips aren't just escapes. Some trips lead you to exactly where you're meant to be. For me, that place was beside Alex, in a love that had quietly waited for the right moment to bloom. The forest, the lake, the quiet nights, they had all been witnesses to the start of something beautiful. And now, every day felt like a continuation of that first weekend. A reminder that sometimes the best adventures are the ones that change your heart forever.